Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. Who's the G besides me?
Je m'appelle Georges.
Ah, le Georges avec le G. Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us for this weekly connection. We are reading from the portion of Tetzaveh, page 3, volume 12 in the English. All right, let's start with the synopsis, Ellen.
This passage tells about the Shekhinah, Zeranpin, and the Nukva in the context of building the tabernacle. In the title...
Sorry, just making it easier for you.
Thank you. In the title verse, Rabbi Shimon finds that "and you" is written to be inclusive of the Shekhinah. Rabbi Yitzchak believes that the upper light, Zeranpin, and the lower light, the Nukva, are included in that phase. He says that the sun, Zeranpin, dwelled in the moon, the Nukva, and they came together to dwell upon the work of the tabernacle. Rabbi Shimon talks about the Shekhinah that is called heart, and the Nukva, that is called heart, so that when the sun dwells in the moon, everything is replete with everything. We are also told that the unity of the name "and you" includes male and female, and therefore all that are wise-hearted. Those who built the tabernacle were able to do so only after the Holy Spirit secretly whispered to them how it should be done. Since the Holy Spirit is alluded to in the name "and you," Rabbi Shimon prays that the supernal light will not move away from the lower light, because when it does, light is not present in the world. It was because of this that the temple was destroyed in the days of Jeremiah, and although the temple was later rebuilt, the light did not return properly even then. The name Isaiah brings redemption and the return of the supernal light and the final rebuilding of the temple. Rabbi Shimon explains that the vast significance of the two names, Jeremiah and Isaiah, one meaning shall rise and the other meaning salvation, and tells us that it is the combination of the letters and names that brings about action according to their meaning, both good and evil. The letters of the holy names cause supernal secrets to appear according to the meaning of the name, for the letters themselves cause holy supernal secrets to appear in them.
ואתה תצווה את בני ישראל וגומר, ואתה הקרב אליך את אהרון אחיך וגומר, אמר רבי חייא, מה ישנה הכה מרחול, אתר דכתיב ואתה הקרב אליך, ואתה תדבר אל כל חוכמי לב, ואתה תצווה את בני ישראל, ואתה קח לך בשמיים, בסמים, ראש מר דרור, אלא קולה ברזה, אילאה יהיו להכללה שכינתה בידה.
And you shall command the children of Israel, and take you to Aaron your brother. Rabbi Chia said, why is this different than all other places? For it is written, and take you to you, and you shall speak to all that are wise-hearted, and you shall command the children of Israel. Take you also to the best spices of pure mirth. It is not written as in all other places, and offer and speak and command and take. He answers, but everything is done with a supernal secret in order to include the Shekhinah with him, because the Shekhinah is called you, and when it is written, and you, it is done to include the Shekhinah with him in commanding, speaking, etc.
אמר רבי יצחק, נאורה אילאה ונאורה תתאה כליל כחדה, יקרא ואתה, כמה דעת אמר, ואתה מחיה את כולם, ועל דלה כתיב והקרבת את אהרון אחיך. וציווית את בני ישראל, ודיברת את כל חוכמי לב בגין דיהו, זימנה שריה שמשה בשיא הרע, והשתתף קולה, כחדה לשריה על עממותה. דעבודה אמר ריבי אלעזר מאחה, אשר נתן השם חוכמה ותבונה בהמה.
Rabbi Yitzchak said, the upper light, which is Zeran Pin, and the lower light, which is the Nukva, are included together in and you, because you is the name of the Nukva, as mentioned before, and the extra Vav equals and is Zeran Pin. As you say, and you do preserve them all, that alludes to Zeran Pin and the Nukva. Therefore, it is not written, and take you to Aaron, your brother, and command the children of Israel, and speak to all that are wise-hearted, because at that time, the sun, which is Zeran Pin, dwelt in the moon, which is the Nukva, and they came together, namely Zeran Pin and the Nukva, to dwell upon the craftsmanship of this work. Therefore, it is written of them, and you, which denotes Zeran Pin and the Nukva. Rabbi Elazar said, from here it is implied that the Holy One, blessed be he, dwelt upon the craft of the work of the tabernacle, as written, and whom Hashem put wisdom and understanding.
Thank you. Let's do one more verse. רבי שמעון אמר, מאחר ואתה תדבר אל כל חוכמי לב, אשר מלהטיב רוח חוכמה, אשר מלהטיב מבאה, אלא אשר מלהטיב להוא ליבה. מלהטיב רוח חוכמה כדאי דכתיב, ונחה עליו רוח השם רוח חוכמה. וגומר ועל דייץ צריך אשר מלהטיב רוח חוכמה, דשריה שימשה בסערה באש למותה דחולה, ועל דייט רשים, קולה בכל אתר אמר רבי אלעזר, אי אחי, הנה ואתה, איך מתייבשן בקראה. That's a long one here, all for you.
Okay. Rabbi Shimon said, and from this it is implied that Zeran Pin and the Nukva dwelt upon the craft of the work of the tabernacle, as it is written, and you shall speak to all that are wise-hearted, whom I have filled with the spirit of wisdom. Whom I have filled should have been in plural if it refers to the wise-hearted, but whom I have filled is in singular, referring to that heart. The Shekhinah is called heart, as it is written, and the spirit of Hashem shall rest upon him, the spirit of wisdom. Therefore, it should say, whom I have filled with the spirit of wisdom, to teach that the sun, which is Zeran Pin, dwells in the moon, which is the Nukva, which is called heart, replete with everything. Therefore, they are all recorded, namely Zeran Pin and the Nukva, throughout the texts of the work of the tabernacle, that it is written of them, and you, which alludes to Zeran Pin and the Nukva. Rabbi Elazar said to him, if so, how are all of these instances of and you explained in the course of passages if, can't read that word. It's kind of in the, okay, if we explain that they pertain to Zeran Pin and the Nukva.
Very good. Self-explanatory. So, I guess I'll start with a metaphor. I like to tell little stories that are basically giving us like a gist of what such an ancient text is trying to teach us in a way that it would still remain relevant. And so we are sort of like traveling back or forth. There is no real time in counting the Torah. But if we were to speak about the Israelites and we're talking about coming out of Egypt, in the coming out of Egypt, the whole story that we call the Haggadah, which is basically in translation to tell a story. And spiritually, metaphysically, we learn that this is like sort of like an evolution from the embryo to the wise men. So there are 4 stages during the Haggadah, and 15 steps, but there are really 4 stages for the development of the soul. And the development of the soul can be done in one lifetime or in reincarnations if the soul is let's call it like a slow learner. There are some souls that are fast learners, and it takes them like 1, 2, 3 lifetimes. And some of the sparks of souls that are needing more repetition. And if you will, and they teach that, from like, not just, they don't teach it just in school, they teach it in anything that you want to learn. If you want to learn swimming, if you want to learn, how do you call it? I'm going to use an example that I don't even know the word, but I'm like, it's like, it's not saber, it's like those very thin sabers, I guess. How's that sport called? And then they have like the big mask and they're dressed in white. What is it called?
Fencing.
Fencing. Thank you very much. I'm being traumatized by Parents Trap, the movie that my kids watch almost every single day. And so there is like a section about fencing. And so you see, if you talk about fencing, or you talk about drawing, or you talk about any type of exercise, or even reading, like the teacher in the kindergarten, they keep repeating to the children, but they also repeat to the parents, you should practice at home, because at the end of the day, it is all about repetition. Now, this is not a small example about teaching kindergartners to read. This is also a perfect example for us adults going through a specific tikkun, karma, correction that we're going through, because at the end of the day, each and every single one of us comes to this world to learn a certain lesson. That certain lesson can take a lifetime, or it can take a year, it can take a week, or it can take 10 lifetimes, or it can take eternity. And those are the things, those are the, if you will, like the loops, or the repetitions of karma that are taking place in our lives, sometimes with the same individual, or sometimes with different people, but the same tikkun, the same challenge that is keeping on coming back. And it doesn't matter where or how far you're going to move to, it's still going to hunt you down. It's not because the universe wants a piece of you, it's because the universe is offering you a chance to have that vessel that is in tune with that specific lesson, to evolve from the embryonic state to the sage, to the wise. So it goes with the beginning, which is the embryo, to the small child that is born, and that small child becomes a young adult, and the young adult becomes an older, wise man or woman that is represented like in different figures, depending the philosophy or the religion or whatnot. But there are 4 stages really, and those 4 stages, they aren't just about a lesson about Pesach. It's not a lesson about Pesach. It's a lesson about every challenge that we go through. Now, when we're talking, and when the Zohar here is talking about the Zeir Anpin and the Nukva, if you will, it's like the mature, synchronized, ultimate, cooked imperfection, al dente, of a situation that you want to see, that embryonic state that evolves to maturity and has successfully bonded with the story, bonded with the lesson that needs to be learned. And so that is when the nukva of that limitation is actually evolving to maturity, and where you do not need, it's not that the challenge is gone, the challenge could still be, but it's not affecting you anymore. So, right before I started this class, my daughter was talking about a child that, a kid in a class that she used to have like complications, let's just call it this way. And she also had some complications with a teacher at the beginning, and now they're almost like best friends. And with that teacher and with this kid that is, and I told her, this kid, once told her like, I hate you. And I told her, like the difference that there is between love and hate is very, very close. And think about it. How many times did you tell your dad, I hate you? Or how many times did you tell your mom, I hate you? You're a terrible mom, you're a terrible dad. I wish this and I wish that. And then you regret because in the moment you were reactive, etc., etc. But do you love that person? Of course I love that person. I love my dad, I love my mom. And we need to know that when in a raw state, it is negative because that's what we came to transform. That is what we came to correct. But in the ultimate, that nukva, that baby embryonic state is becoming in its mature state, it's wisdom, it's compassion, it's forgiveness, etc., etc. And I love that example about Pesach because it is repeated in every stage, in every context of our life. Which means that if we are reactive to a certain situation or individual, we are certainly in the early stages of that path, of that specific path. We might have 120 different paths, 120 different challenges, 120 different stories and lessons that need to be learned. But in relation to that specific individual, to that specific challenge, think about it. I don't know exactly where you are in that challenge that you may think about right now, because, like, as soon as I say the word challenge, one of us is like, oh yeah, my ex, oh yeah, my job, oh yeah, my health, oh yeah, my neighbor, oh yeah, my financial situation. This is basically, and you can see, like, at the end of the day, it's earthly challenges, earthly problems, but they're not problems that the universe sent us to tease us and to make us suffer, etc. There is a lesson that needs to be learned. And we can somewhat identify where we are in those 4 stages of the embryonic state of becoming a little child that is innocent, that is victim, that is blaming or whatnot, where the embryonic state is that you can be in the midst of the challenge, but you are in total oblivion, you're in total denial that you have a challenge there until the bubble bursts and you realize that you have a challenge, and that's where you are victimizing and blaming and can't move on and can't forgive, and you realize, and this person becomes a nightmare and controls you and hypnotizes you, and your life is basically ruined because of that individual or that certain person. And then from there is still an evolution, because some people think that this is the end of the world, this is the end of their job, this is the end of their relationship. There is no end. That's not the end. There is no end, basically. But I'll touch maybe upon it today or another time. But the point being is that if we are in that stage, it means that there is a next level. And the next level is that there is a lesson to be learned from that situation or this individual. And as long as I'm missing the lesson, not only it's going to perpetuate what is going on with this individual challenge or group of people, but if I'm missing the point and you're just going to quit, or you're going to divorce, or you're going to fire or whatnot, the problem is not gone. You're still carrying with you that tikkun, you're still carrying with you that lesson to be learned. This is what we carry with us. We don't carry with us experiences. We're carrying with us lessons to be learned. And as long as the lesson is not being learned, has not been learned, then we're going to draw another situation, another individual at another episode of our time, of our life. And it might be very different. For people outside, by the way, it's not different. They're going to say, really? Like, again? Like, you're dating exactly the same person as the last time, who abused you, took advantage of you, or like you didn't have your voice and you couldn't step up for it. This person looks alike, and he even walks alike, and he even talks alike, like, don't you see? And you're like, no, what are you talking about? That is the embryonic state. The embryonic state is that I'm completely oblivious of my tikkun, of what it is that basically I need to learn. And whatever that lesson, and I can suggest a couple of things, but the lesson is very individual, and nobody can tell you this is your lesson. It doesn't matter how psyche or how intuitive the lesson, a lesson is very personal. And as long as you have not learned the lesson, it's going to repeat. But from the moment that you have learned the lesson, that is when you evolve from that lower stage to the highest state. So there are different names to it, but in this portion, the Zohar calls it Nukva going to Zeir Anpin. Zeir Anpin is basically the matured boy, the matured prince that is elevated. Chochmah and Binah are called the parents, they're called Abba and Ima. And so their dream is to have like this embryo, evolve, elevate from Malchut, which is called Nukva, to the level of Zeir Anpin. Zeir Anpin is like the 6 Sefirot together, and is like all mature and all sublime and all perfection and all, compassion and forgiveness and let go and lesson learned and is done basically. He has like overcome. But from the moment that you have achieved that, so first of all, you know when the lesson has been learned. You're like the first like wake up call is like, how in the world was I so stupid, excuse my French, to go through the same typical similar challenge without getting it, without seeing it. There is a perfect word in Hebrew. It's frayer. Frayer means, I don't even know how to translate it. It's like, frayer is somebody that is like being taken advantage basically for cheap, like, like really like, I don't know if you got the idea. So this is why they say very often, they say about Israelis, they're not frayerim. An Israeli is not frayer. Why? Because he stands up for himself and he recognizes a con from like a mile away, etc., etc. Somebody who is frayer is somebody who is like naive, somebody who is oblivious, or somebody who is like a total denial. So obviously, there is like the part that we could argue that is like the simple aspect is also light. At the end of the day, everything comes from the light. But when we are in a challenge that is not extracting from us the best of our potential, of what we can do with that situation, what lesson is to be learned from our soul, for our soul, so that I can grow and I can teach and I can channel for others, so that if others are going through the same type of situation, I'll be a beacon. I'll be a beacon, because there are so many lost souls that do not have the capacity to learn. They don't have the capacity to see. They don't have the capacity to overcome, and they are in total oblivion. So likely the chance somebody who is already seeking spirituality is not in the embryonic state already, because the embryonic state, you're not interested in self-help. You're not interested to improve yourself. And so if somebody talks to that person who is like in the embryonic state or stage of spirituality, of transformation, we tell you, no, I'm good, I don't need help. My life is perfect. And it's, again, it sounds amazing and positive and optimistic, etc. But we came to transform. And if we are oblivious to the fact that we came to transform and evolve spiritually, etc., and we live in this bubble of la la land, it's a time bomb machine. So that when that person is going to lose his job, is going to get divorced, or is going to have his friend quit on him because he lost all of his money, that is when this person is like a wreck and is like lost and doesn't know what to do with himself. Why? Because he has nothing to hang on to. Doesn't have spirituality, doesn't have the idea of transformation. And ultimately, that needs to lead this person to evolve from the embryonic state to the state of a little bit more maturity, even if it's more simplistic, even if it's like on the level of the child that is whining and that is complaining and that is blaming, but still it is more awake than somebody who is oblivious. And so this is why also this is an invitation and maybe like a reminder for us, like to be compassionate for the people that are behind, because there will always be people that are behind. People that are not interested in transformation, people that are not interested in world peace, people that are not interested in eradicating violence and hatred and division and separation and gaps, etc., etc. There is another aspect to this, is that when we are in this oblivion, we are in a group of people. I sometimes, bring some aspect of it in and out, but those are things that we can see right now very clearly. Today with the cancel culture and with all sorts of whatever is going on today. By the way, it started with the liberals, but now the cancel culture is biting the tuches of the liberal because they're being canceled in a lot of ways. Whoopi Goldberg and a couple of others that are and even the blue and the red today are tired of this cancel culture where you cannot say anything without being canceled, basically. But the point of being is that today we got to a point where you can't speak your mind anymore. You can't be yourself anymore. And I'm not necessarily pointing finger in this direction or that direction, because I have friends from both spectrums and from both political parties. And unfortunately, I am today in a position where I cannot really say what I feel. I cannot really voice my opinion, because if I voice my opinion, I probably would be canceled. I'll probably be criticized or whatnot, because you can't really have an opinion. And it's on both sides. I have a very good friend. I went lunch with him and we exchanged for 5 minutes. We saw that it's not going to go to any good place. So we just, went back to speaking about how good the food was. It was very good food. But anyway, that's the idea. The idea is that he has family members that he's not talking to because, this one is blue and this one is red and vice versa. And they don't talk to each other because of different political whatnot. And because if you're watching Fox, you're going to speak what Fox says. And if you're watching CNN, you're going to speak what CNN is saying. But rarely would you say what you really feel, what you really think. And so there is a guy that I really get to appreciate a lot, not because of his political beliefs, is Bill Maher. Maher, I don't know if I pronounce his name very well. So he's a liberal, but he's he's not embracing what's going on right now, and he's speaking his truth. And he's getting a lot of backfire from the political spectrum of the Democrats, etc., because he calls, a donkey, or he calls this, that. And so he's not being careful of what he's going to say, because this used to be his party, that you could act from what he says. There was just a segment where he repeated that. I'm very interested, by the way, to listen to everything and then to make my own opinion, to make my own decision about what is real, what resonates with me. And at the end of the day, if you have a bunch of millions of people that are just repeating what other people are saying because you are part of a political party, you are in oblivion. You're losing some aspect of your truth. So you're going to speak to that person who believes in that, or you're going to have a conversation with your bestie and you're in the same party and you're going to talk about Trump, or you're going to talk about Biden. It doesn't matter. It's the same thing at the end of the day. You're going to realize, and if you're really recording yourself, you're just repeating what that party's leaning, news channel is basically feeding the people. So very often when I meet this kind of situation, I ask the person, but what do you think? What do you think? And I'm not necessarily asking this party or that party. I'm asking this person, and they're all my friends, and I'm really trying the best that I can not to say something that, and I'm very straightforward, and sometimes I can cross some lines, but at the end of the day, the relationship for me is more important than any political party. And so when I hear the repetition, I say, but what do you think? And very often, the person is not able to tell. is not able to tell, is just, keeping on repeating what the medias are saying. This is a big lesson for us because there is a big awakening. And I'm not talking about the walk, or I'm talking about it like the spirit and the soul's awakening that think for itself. The soul wants to be awakened, wants to evolve, wants to grow. It wants to go from Nugva to Zeanpin. It doesn't want to be controlled. It doesn't want to be manipulated. It wants to be its own master. So imagine that you are an overbearing parent. An overbearing parent, and the child is coming to the age of doing his homework. And obviously, the overbearing parent usually have all the answers, even if it's not always right. Very often he's not going to let the child do the homework. He's going to do the homework for the child, right? And so in that case, in that situation, you have this child that is growing from, the embryonic state to the young child and the young man, etc. And if the childhood has been like this child is likely going to look for somebody to tell him what to do. Why? Because his entire childhood, this child had the father or the mother or the sister or whatnot, or the tutor that was doing the work. Intentionally or not intentionally, some people just don't have the skill of patience, and they don't want to wait, and they don't want to go through the process of learning of this child, and they just want to skip the process because it's easier. And if it is easier, it goes faster, right? And so people just we're used to go fast. And not a lot of people have the skill of patience. But anyway, and so if you have that overbearing person who is like a lack of patience and lack of compassion and lack of empathy, just want to get it done, you need to know the impact that it has on this employee, on this child, on this sibling, on this friend, because likely the chance is that if you were the overbearing sibling when you were young, you're going to look for a person when you're going to grow up to be overbearing with them, overbearing with your spouse, overbearing with your child. It doesn't stop there. And so we need to know that it has countless repercussions. And so when we see today a certain amount of people that are just educated to be told what to do. They're waiting to be told what to do. We can see this, I mentioned political, but also financial, also employment. And so there are, I can't remember who was the successful quote that I read, is that if you want to get something like in a certain industry, robotic industry, not robots, but something that is like you just need to repeat, do the same thing over and over, you're not looking for leaders. You're looking for followers. Because the leaders would always try to outsmart the system, and they would always try to get promoted and evolve, because they're not going to stand doing the same action, A, B, C, next, A, B, C, next, A, B, C, next. So we see this a lot in industrial companies. We see that a lot in China, in some Latin American countries, in some African countries, wherever the big corporations are going to look for cheap labor. They're going to look for cheap labor, and they're not looking for people that are super educated, and they're not looking for people that are, big mind and big vessel and leadership skills. They want people that are followers. And if you think about this idea and this concept, what are we in a certain aspect of our life? If we are a follower in that certain aspect of life, a follower means that we're not innovating. We're not looking to improve the situation. We're not looking to overcome a certain challenge. And so instead of overcoming the challenge and finding a solution, we perpetuate the situation. We perpetuate the challenge. We perpetuate the obstacle. And so you can have that marriage that is basically doomed to fail, because both of those individuals, they are in a vicious circle. And they're not leaders in their own person. They're followers. And in a certain job, it's the same thing. In friendship, it's the same thing. You can have one that is the leader, that is always deciding where to go, that is always deciding where we're going to have a drink, that is always going to decide where we're going to have vacation or what we're going to do to have fun tonight. And then you have like the group of followers. I've seen this with kids. I've seen this with adults and with even more adults. I see this like I mentioned it before, the group of women that are playing cards with my mom. There is always the same one or two that are making the decisions, and the rest are the followers. And we need to know that this happens in our lives too. If there is a perpetuating challenge in our life, we are followers. We're followers. And if we have enough, by the way, it's a very good signal when we get to a place where the accumulation of challenges and the accumulation of disrespect, the accumulation of putting down and the accumulation of whatnot is pushing us to say, stop. I can't take this anymore. I have enough. I'm going to do it on my own, even if it means A, B, and C. And that is a very good sign. That is a very good sign, because that means that you went from the child stage of the vessel to the young adult that is becoming leader of his own life, that is becoming leader of his own decisions, where you're becoming a problem solver, where you're becoming the person that seeks to grow, that seeks to quit on a toxic situation. Because the child, and even worse, the embryo, can be in a toxic relationship and either be in oblivion or be a victim about it. So you're a good friend and you have evolved maybe in this lifetime or previous lifetime, and you're like, but why don't you just call it quit? So for you from the outside, it seems very, very simple what needs to be done, because this is not your tikkun. But exactly what this person is going through in their second stage, where they're evolving from, okay, now I understand I'm a victim, to understand, by the way, that we're a victim is a realization, big realization. And the stage of getting to that place that we're saying, enough, I don't want this anymore, it's a huge epiphany. So there are different stages like this that we grow, and this is why it can be like in 100 different situations and different challenges, and each one of them is to learn a lesson. Life is about learning lessons. It's not about those experiences. Those experiences are enriching and whatever, and you've learned all sorts of things, but if you're keeping on repeating the same challenge, you didn't learn anything. So you can say, oh, I have like all these experiences, A, B, and C, like 7 marriages. No exaggeration. 7 marriages. It was great experiences. And I've learned so much. You didn't learn anything. Because if you got married 7 times, you didn't get the point. You didn't get the lesson. What was the lesson? I had a person that sat in front of me and said, it's my 5th marriage. And so I said, so what was the lesson? So I'm not going to share what the answer was, but it was obvious that the person didn't learn, because it was all about blame. So I mean, it was like this guy was in between the stage of the embryo, which is total oblivion and denial, to the little child that is total victim and total blame. But it's still a stage. It's still a stage that is not at the very beginning, where you're going through all these challenges and you don't even realize. It's like, somebody told you told somebody, maybe you should work on your anger issues, and the person says, what anger issues? I don't have any anger. I don't have any jealousy. But we need to be compassionate, because we're very quick to judge. There is something that I read today, and I'll share it with you. I was saying to my wife this morning, and even if it's simple, and even if it's not true that it really comes from him, it doesn't really matter, because the lesson is amazing. And so it goes like this. 1 second, scrolling down. Here we go. Albert Einstein once wrote on a blackboard. Again, I don't know if it's real, but anyway. 9 times 1 equal 9, 9 times 2 equal 18, and goes up to 9 times 9 equal 81, 9 times 10 equal 91. Suddenly, chaos erupted in the classroom because Einstein made a mistake. Obviously, the correct answer to 9 times 10 isn't 91, and all his students ridiculed him. Einstein waited for everyone to be silent and said, despite the fact that I analyzed 9 problems correctly, no one congratulated me. But when I made one mistake, everybody started laughing. This means that even if a person is successful, society will notice his slightest mistake, and they like that. So don't let criticism destroy your dreams. The only person who never makes a mistake is someone who does nothing. I love that. And so, call it society, call it whatever it is. It is in our nature to focus on the bad. And so this is why it takes an extra effort when we see somebody that is evolving through his stages, from the embryo to the sage to the wise man. And it's very possible that in 119 different phases or areas in his life, he has achieved perfection. But there is this one area where he's really a poor performer. He's really not doing well. He is arrogant and he's rude and he's reactive, etc. And this is how people are going to characterize, and it doesn't matter the amount of good that this person is going to do because of this one negative trait. So it is also such a big lesson of compassion, a big lesson of patience with ourselves to begin with, and then with others, that we have our own process in all those different facets and angles and directions in our lives, with relationship and soulmate and finance and health and friendship, etc., etc. In every single area, it's not perfection, it's work in progress. And if you have reached perfection, it's great. That means that now that you have learned the lesson, you can teach it to others. You can just keep it for yourself. You came to share it. You came to teach it. You came to become a beacon of light for the millions of people that are currently going through the same stage of being at the embryonic of the little child, of the little child growing to the mature child. You're there to help them evolve. So obviously somebody who doesn't want help, you can't really help somebody that doesn't want help, but at least make yourself known. Make yourself known. You don't have to tell the person what to do and be the overbearing friend or family member, but sometimes the hint works perfectly. And a hint can be a story. A hint can be your experience, sharing your experience. It doesn't have to be, hey, I see what you're going through, this is what you should do. It's the most annoying thing. It's like a parent that is having a hard time at the supermarket with a child, and then you have an overbearing stranger that is coming and saying, yeah, maybe you should do A, B, and C. And you're looking at the person, and it's like, mind your own business. Why? First, because you didn't create that vessel to receive the help from this person. It doesn't mean that you don't need help, but you're not prepared. You need to prepare yourself. You need to cook that, that embryonic state and allow it to evolve to the person that is willing and wanting and ready to change and to grow and to manifest and to complete the learning of that lesson and then share it. Because the arrival is not the learning. The fact that you learned it is not the final stage. Is that now that you sort of like close the loop, now it's time to share it. Because the universe maybe took a year, maybe took 10 lifetimes to finally teach you the lesson. It's your turn. It's your turn to share it. Thank you very much. And I'll see you.
Can I say something?
Fine.
I just want to say thank you to Ellen for reading.
Oh,
Yeah.
You're very good at it. I just wanted to say thank you.
On the side note, I tried a couple of times to let you guys read as well, but
I can't read like that.
It's
yeah, I
an
know.
iPhone.
It's a very unique skill.
Thank you.
You're muted, Ellen. You're muted.
Thank you.
You're muted, Ellen. Can't hear you.
I said it's something I don't love to do, and that's why I'm doing it.
A good lesson too. But I hope that while you're doing it, you're enjoying it. Otherwise, have a good week, everybody.
Thank you.
You too.
Thank
Thank you,
you for
Yehuda.
sharing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.